At the 9th Presidential Quarterly Business Forum, Vice President Oshibajo reiterates government's commitment to addressing unemployment, infrastructure, and power.
National Assembly is set to resume today after nearly 3 months on recess.
Global economic managers meet in Bali, Indonesia, as World Bank and IMF annual meetings begin.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we continue our conversation on the conduct of party primaries ahead of the 2019 elections.
Political parties in Nigeria just concluded primaries across the country in an attempt to meet the October 7th deadline by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC.
Now, earlier, INEC had published regulations governing the conduct of party primaries in the country to serve as a guide, as it were, for the process. But the Commission, as well as Nigerians from across various spectra of life, have expressed worry over the manner some of these primaries have been conducted in recent times.
Now, some political parties have been accused of engaging in vote buying and instigating violence during these primaries.
And other issues such as the lack of internal democracy, so-called Godfather syndrome, insufficient inclusivity, as well as the lack of transparency and credibility have been described as pitfalls that nearly marred the recent party primaries.
You can recall that about 80 elections were nullified by courts after the 2015 general elections, with INEC ordered to issue certificates of return to petitioners in 37 cases.
Now, the incumbent INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, had explained that most of those elections that were overturned were due to poorly conducted primaries by political parties.
A discovery that INEC boss says his commission made after studying most of the judgment is that this, and of course this is our focus, those issues were the discoveries by the INEC national chairman, and we intend to look at these issues on Good Morning Nigeria in this edition.
All right, Femi, that's indeed what we are returning to. We began the conversation yesterday with our guest, focusing on some of the very crucial aspects of the party primaries that took place and the judicial decisions to which the INEC chairman referred, of course, concerned the so-called pre-election matters, not matters that occurred in the course of elections. And I'm sure that our viewers would have heard from time to time how some persons who were either in the National Assembly or otherwise were asked to vacate their seats, and some other persons who had been deemed to have won the primaries at an earlier stage were now asked to be issued with a certificate of return. So that's part of our focus, examining again the whole idea of party primaries and the implications going forward. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I would like to welcome you to this edition of the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, in the course of the program, we have our regular companion segments, newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. Femi?
I am Femi Okewo, thanking you for joining us this morning. And to add to what Kingsley has just said, just last week, the Chief Justice of Nigeria revealed that there are still pre-election cases from the 2015 general elections still pending in courts. What a pity. Now, but before we go into all those, let's take the day's news from Ogwa Vivian Onyediba.
Thank you, Femi. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to the news. Vice President Yemi Oshibajo says government is on the right track to cracking the unemployment problem. The Vice President at the 9th Presidential Quarterly Business Forum in Abuja says the Buhari administration is investing heavily in infrastructure, solving the power problem, and generally enhancing the business environment.
is by enabling the private sector to do business easily, to do what it does best, so that opportunities are created in agriculture, in the agro-allied industry, in services, in manufacturing, and in all the other areas that the private sector is dominant.
And Nigeria is joining economic leaders at the annual meeting of the World Bank and IMF in Bali, Indonesia. Well, this is to forge ties and build conversations geared towards improving the global economy.
Finance and banking sector in the world are putting their eyes on Indonesia, particularly on Bali. We'll have the Bali declarations. Hopefully, in this global economic situations, there's a lot of uncertainty, we hope that we'll come up with something really a breakthrough, responding by this global uncertainty in the economic side.
And to legislative matters now, the Senate is set to reconvene after about 3 months of its annual recess. Well, the legislators are expected to give accelerated consideration to the executive communications pending in the Senate.
Forward to the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, working very hard, burning midnight candles to ensure that we deliver those things that we should have had done before we left for the recess, and I hope that we won't have any cause to fight in the National Assembly.
And a similar situation is in the House of Representatives, as it also prepares to resume plenary Tuesday in view of its leadership changing political camps during the long recess. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali says, just as in the Senate, these and others are issues which need urgent attention.
Constitutionality or otherwise of the defection of the two presiding officers to the PDP is going to be in the front burner, and I think is going to elicit a lot of debate from the members of both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
And talking politics now, the All Progressives Congress has inaugurated a 6-man appeals committee to look into all petitions arising from the party's primary elections held nationwide. Political correspondent Saliu Abdullahi reports that the committee is headed by a former Edo State Governor, Professor Oserieme Osumbo.
Because from next tomorrow, we'll begin to forward names to INEC.
All the stakeholders, all the aspirants, all those who have participated in the process have a sense of satisfaction that they have been fairly treated by the party.
The All Progressives Congress has congratulated Alhaji Atiku Abubakar on his election as the 2019 presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. In a statement, the party's acting national publicity secretary, Yekini Nabena, says this is in keeping with the party's belief in participating democracy and the electorate's right to freely choose from candidates in any political contest. In a related development, an aspirant at the just concluded People's Democratic Party's presidential primary, the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, has congratulated the winner, former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, in what he described as a transparent exercise, and urged all members of the party to roll up their sleeves and set to work as members of one united family. And the Chairman, National Electoral Committee for APC Governorship, National and State Assembly primaries in Zamfara State, Major General Mustafa Abubakar, says none of the elections took place in the state as at the expiration of the deadline for political parties to submit list of candidates to INEC. Jamilu Ibrahim Gusau reports that the chairman stated this at a press conference in Gusau.
A question was asked whether or not the committee that came from Abuja conducted an election in Zamfara State. We did not. We still have our materials, and we hope to present our report to the headquarters in Abuja.
And moving on, the police in Abuja says Ben Murray Bruce and Dino Melaye did not honor its invitation to answer questions bordering on disruption of public peace following a protest to the police headquarters on Friday last week. And that's the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Femi and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Caring for the patients of typhoid and diarrhea is our responsibility. And these illnesses are often spread due to eating with unclean hands. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only. These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Yes, you're welcome back. And now it's business news. A central bank to review $8.1 billion with MTN repatriation fund as the Nigerian Stock Exchange opens the week in the green, with the all-share index appreciating by 0.19%. Details on business news with Joy Uzo.
On new developments from business, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, has revealed that the $8.1 billion it expects MTN Group Limited to repatriate may get reviewed. The governor, while speaking to journalists outside the country, disclosed that the telecommunications giant and other parties involved had presented the Apex Bank with more documents explaining their defense. The new development will ease the pressure on MTN and bring both parties to a considerate truce. The Apex Bank, it appears, is once again donning its anger in what the chief regulator described as resolving things amicably. In another development, oil price dropped to around $83 a barrel on Monday, pressured by expectations that some Iranian oil exports will keep flowing after the U.S. reimposed sanctions, easing a strain on supplies. Brent crude, the international benchmark, was down 1.07 to $83.09 per barrel. It had hit a four-year high of $86.74 last week. And to the equities market, Nigeria Stock Exchange All-Share Index Monday eases previous day loss to open the week positive, inching up by 0.19% to close at 32,444.96 basis points as against 0.12% depreciation recorded previously. Here is a graphic representation of the closing figures. That's business news. Many thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And already with us is our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atuebi. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Femi. Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you. We have 5 newspapers this morning, Femi.
Yes.
And the front pages, of course, have stories on politics, as to be expected, matters arising from the 2019 elections, as well as the resumption from recess by the National Assembly. Let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper has as its lead the National Assembly story. It says, APC senators meet over Saraki as National Assembly resumes, with the rider Atiku and others move to save Assembly leaders. That story jumps to page 5. And above that headline, you have 2 other stories on labor matters. Federal government and Labour agree on new minimum wage. That's according to WABA. WABA is the NLC president on page 3. The federal government hasn't given its own side. And 689.15 billion naira paid to federal government retirees in 11 years. Details of that story can be found on page 17. And then right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, we take 2 headlines there. Supreme Council, JNI, that is Jamaatul Nasrul Islam, Supreme Council as well as JNI express concerns over Jos mayhem. Details on page 10, Supreme Council and JNI. Now, Ethiopia to abolish visas for all Africans. That's in greater detail on page 42.
A mixture of stories in the leadership newspapers, but let's take the headline story first, which is the political story. Atiku shops for running mate in Southeast. Ekweremadu Okonjo-Iweala Obi tipped for VP slot. And then Ohaneze gives condition for support. That story is on page 4. And let's now go back to the other story on the leadership newspaper. FG reviews security architecture, inaugurates defense think tank. And then also in the leadership, we have court affirms EFCC's power to probe state's account. And that is a landmark judgment, and it's seen on page 8. Still on the leadership newspaper, we have had it from Kingsley earlier on. It's FG to announce new minimum wage this week.
Not from me, it was from Waba.
Okay. Yes, while you were reviewing the paper there. Now, no threat to PMB's re-election, says Kogi State Governor. Now that's back to politics, still on leadership, and that should be found on page 16. Let's wrap up leadership with court stops planned police demotion. Court stops planned police demotion. And then finally, on leadership, we have World Bank raises $134 million green bond to combat climate change. That is found on page 29. Bayo.
Yes, the good news is that Labour, government, organized private sector seem to have reached a compromise about new minimum wage. The papers puts it differently. Leadership says federal government to announce minimum wage. The Sun puts it specifically, federal government to announce a minimum wage this week, while the Daily Trust says the Labour agree and federal government agree on new minimum wage. However, the Daily Sun is indicating the process that went through for which a compromise was eventually reached. Labour had started with 65,000 naira. Organized public sector has started with 41, while Labour later on reviewed its position to 38. Organized private sector reviewed its position down to 25. Federal government offered 24. Eventually, it seems give and take, a compromise have been reached, and the new minimum wage, though was not announced by Labour, but sources to Sun is hinting about 30,000 naira. If we go back to 2011, when the current minimum wage was instituted, at then 18,000 naira was equivalent to $100. By today's 360 naira to $1, that value that has lost its value to almost half its value. It is that 18,000 is now equivalent to $50. So that is the implication that Labour had to agitate because the value of the 18,000 has depreciated considerably, far below 50%. Now, if that 30,000 is accepted, by implication, it means if we go by 360 naira to $1, we will now have a minimum wage that will be placing it to equivalent of about $83.3, which is far lower than the $100 it was in 2011.
Yeah, ability to pay.
Ability to pay. Yeah.
Ability to pay. That's a significant point with regard to the minimum wage. There are a number of other stories that have been read by you, but let me quickly take others from New Telegraph, and then I will return to those stories. New Telegraph now. We're taking a look at New Telegraph. Now, above the nameplate, of course, is a story on the minimum wage pronouncement. And then below the nameplate of New Telegraph, you have a window of headlines. It says primaries. That's the first one. It says protesters hold Oshomole and National Working Committee hostage. Details on page 6. And you have another story there. Tambawa congratulates Atiku, pledges support. And then it says dad impregnates 13-year-old daughter, jailed 14 years. If we could just have the front page as a single shot rather than focusing on the headlines, that might be helpful. Then it says veteran actor and filmmaker Babasala dies at 81. It says veteran actor and filmmaker Babasala dies at 81. Details can be found on page 8. Lead story, back again to politics, 2019. 25 governors and ex-governors pick APC, PDP senatorial tickets with a number of riders there. Kwara and Kano lead with 5. Shage, Afenifere, and CSNAC kick. 6 incumbent ex-deputy governors join race to Senate, and ex-police commissioner takes over Jail Dariye's ticket. And you can see the photograph there of the faces of the former governors and incumbent governors who are seeking to become members of the National Assembly next year. And 2019, the story below that is Nigerians now have a choice. Atiku tells Buhari. And lastly, from the foot of the front page, WHO, Malaysia eliminates mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. That's on page 7.
And the Nigerian Tribune focuses on politics as their main story, but then looks at the resumption of the National Assembly. It says NAS resumes tension in APC, PDP over leadership. That's the leadership of the National Assembly. And that story is found on page 37. We also find that on the Tribune, Fayoshe threatens to quit PDP. Why? Look for the story on page 8. EFCC has powers to probe state accounts. That's the court. The story is found on page 36. And Tribune tributes pour in for Moses Olaya Babasala as he dies at 81. But the main story is on the front page of Tribune. 2019, Buhari's Atiku scams begin fireworks. But I think that the first day was for congratulations from the APC to the PDP. Even if fireworks have not started, it is imagined that fireworks will start. Nigerians will stick to Buhari, so to say APC. Presidency not for sale, APC says. Page 4 of the Tribune.
Our house must go out to the family of Moses Olaya, who is described as the patriarch of comedy in Nigeria. About 6 months ago, there were reports about his death, and because he was admitted into hospital, and he recovered, and the first thing he asked for was that that is, bring me pounded yam. He struggled on, and he's
Even
actually
at that point, he was still cracking his jokes.
Cracking his jokes. He struggled on, but one of the critical things that affected his life tremendously was, in fact,
the piracy.
One of his films was actually the one that devastated him most. And since that time, he found it difficult to survive. Our house must go out to him, but
that movie was supposed to be his very first movie.
Yes.
He had been a stage performer all his life, and then he ventured into movies. Orumoru, and he got a lesson of his life.
Yes, actually, the literal meaning of Orumoru was hell is very hot, and eventually they dealt with him seriously because he never benefited from that. Our house must go out. The National Assembly is to resume today. You may recall that they went on recess on 24th July, and they were to resume on 25th of September. But on 23rd of September, the clerk of the National Assembly gave a notification of a deferment to today, 9th of October, because of primaries. Politicians have been warming up because during the time they were on recess, on 24th of July specifically, there were defections from the National Assembly. From this Senate, 36 members defected on 24th July, tilting the balance in the National Assembly from 192 APC to 156 PDP. Following the by-elections in Bauchi and Katsina, APC increased its majority. In the House of Representatives, the balance also tilted. You saw a situation where 36 members had defected, and this also tilted the balance in the lower house. However, there have been contentions about having the two chambers of the National Assembly presided over by members of now the minority party. Some argue that this is an aberration. Others say that it is not far-fetched because even in Nigeria here, We have had instances in the First Republic where we have Emeizio through an alliance between the NPN and the it was NPP then, became the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Even not too far, in the we are now in the 8th Assembly, in the 7th Assembly, then Speaker, who was then a member of the PDP, defected to APC and still continued. But the challenge has raised constitutional questions, and the National Assembly today, instead of resuming, will immediately adjourn in deference to a member of the House of Reps, Funke Adedoyin, who died during the recess. But however, robust debate will start tomorrow when they resume plenary, and it will raise the question about constitutionality or otherwise of the minority party members now presiding over the National Assembly. There have been arguments, some have cited several sections, citing two-thirds majority of members present or two-thirds majority of the whole House. But the operative section is section 50, sub 2, sub C, which specifically refers to the leadership of the National Assembly. And it says that by the votes of not less than two-thirds majority of members of that House.
That's sorted out.
When you say of that House, it means the full membership
of the House,
not necessarily not of those who are present at any given sitting. Yeah. All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. There's the story that we read earlier with regard to the court decision on the powers of the EFCC to investigate the accounts of a state government. In this particular case, the Benue state government. You'll recall several weeks ago we discussed it on this program, yes, by way of a comment on the papers while we're reviewing the headlines. Now, the judge, of course, is of the Federal High Court here in Abuja. There's an earlier decision, of course, which is conflicting with the Court of Coordinate Jurisdiction, that's to say, a court of equal powers, yes, with regard to the Ekiti state government accounts. Now, well, if the judge, his lordship says the EFCC has powers to investigate, what is unstated, that the judge gave an obiter with regard to the morality of the approach by the EFCC, that's by the way. But what is unstated has to do with whether, in exercising those powers of investigation, the EFCC could then proceed to freeze the accounts of a state government. Because the judge, again, if you read the judgment closely, the judge held that, look, the EFCC would be investigating and probing not the state government, but named officials.
Named officials.
In a petition. So, but would then that transcend into freezing the accounts of a state government? Or if the EFCC has been investigating, say, officials of any parastatal of the federal government, has the EFCC then proceeded to freeze the accounts of those parastatals?
See, Kingsley, sometimes even lawyers cause problems for the society. I would think that in seeking prayers before a court, you will be specific as to the contention. The answer has been provided whether EFCC can investigate. But then the contention at that moment, at the time they went to court, was whether the EFCC could freeze the account of, and I don't think that was put before the court. Okay. So this one now has been answered. The other one remains unanswered.
Well, like you said, lawyers are in a tendency of causing confusion for us. Luckily, there are two of you here, and I'm the only layman here who is not a lawyer. But our layperson understanding is that the court has categorically said that the EFCC has powers to look into issues relating to fraudulent petition that has been raised involving government officials, particularly, in this case, the Benue state government.
No problem. Yes. But I'm saying that in exercise of those powers of investigation, what can the EFCC do? Or what can the EFCC not do?
Financially black out a state.
Don't worry. Don't forget that the judge was categorical that 3 sections of the EFCC Act was explicit and very far-reaching as regards the powers of the EFCC in investigating corruption.
There's no doubt about that. There's no quarrel about that. There's no quarrel. Let's investigate. But what then can you do while investigating? That's the issue.
Let's look at the warning from INEC. Okay. INEC has warned that campaign should be strictly 90 days to election. And specifically, INEC has put it in black and white, emphasizing on the law, saying that for presidential and National Assembly campaign elections, the campaign cannot begin before November 18th. And for governorship and state assembly, it cannot begin before December 1st. It has also reminded all parties to submit the names of their candidates. The submission requires that the list of the candidates and their personal particulars are to be submitted. Dates have been set for this. For the Presidential and National Assemblies between October 10th and October 18th. For governorship and state assemblies is between October 22nd and November 2nd. INEC says that no time extension will be provided, and every day time is open between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to be submitted at the International Conference Center.
As for the campaigns, I think that the ball is still in the court of INEC. They would be the ones to tell us what is campaign and what is not campaign. If a group of people defect and a party rolls out the drums and organizes a forum to receive those people, would it be classified as campaign? I think the ball will still be in...
That is a rally.
Oh, now we know.
That is a rally.
So the ball will still be in the court of INEC to tell us what campaign is and what campaign
there should be a definition of what is a rally, what is a campaign.
Yesterday on this program, we had a National Commissioner of INEC, Professor Simbine, who joined other guests to discuss party primaries. That's a conversation we're continuing today. And I had asked the question, so look, exactly what is the utility of this INEC provision? When Professor Jega was chairman of INEC, he appeared on Good Morning Nigeria. We also raised the issue with him. There are pseudo campaigns that we have seen. Then all the posters that you are saying do not amount to campaigns. Professor Simbine yesterday said, oh, those ones were for the primaries. How many of the posters and billboards that you have seen that said, this campaign is for the primaries, elect me? They are for, say, 2019. Personally, I don't see the utility of that provision. If people want to campaign, let them campaign.
There can be a utility for it. For instance, particularly in the media, the electronic media and the print media, they will know specifically that until that time, we cannot accept advertisement for campaign.
Yes. Hey, that is easy to, but what is campaign? That is the point. Are you now going to say are you going to exclude certain forms of campaigns? I mean, I said, you have billboards all over the country. You have posters all over the country. And you have comments and statements where persons are appearing on programs, speaking on behalf of particular candidates, as they will now be, not just aspirants. Those amount to campaign. What is the utility? I keep asking that question of trying to restrain persons from campaigning. Perhaps, so that you are able to perhaps monitor, campaign finance violations or campaign finance regulations. But ultimately, I think it is useless.
Now let's go to editorials, and it talks about Nigerian finance. This time it's from the Daily Sun. It's captioned, "The Call Masking Challenge." The Call Masking Challenge. And let me read the introductory paragraph. The report that Nigeria lost over $3 billion or 1.6 trillion naira to call masking and other related infractions in the telecom industry in the past 14 months is worrisome. Apart from constituting a security threat, the sharp practices may have robbed the government and telecom companies of some revenue. Bayo, that is a case to worry Nigeria now, particularly when the government needs all the resources, but then the security implication of call masking. What can Nigeria? What are your thoughts on this editorial?
Call masking is simply international calls that are supposed to arrive in Nigeria, but they are tampered with and they appear to the receiver here as an indigenous call originating here in Nigeria. By so doing, Nigerians or the telecom industry is being ripped off by people paying for Nigerian rates instead of international call. On this same program here, Good Morning Nigeria, I think Kingsley once raised this issue of international call masking, and it was persistent. It's interestingly, the Nigeria Communications Commission has suspended these licenses of 6 of its licensees that probably they suspect are involved in this. But this is actually a financial crime. If it is true that as much as 3 billion naira, equivalent of 1.006 trillion naira is being lost, then there is already a financial crime there. It should be investigated. It's not enough to suspend them. Not only that, NCC says it is on top of it, but they must sit on top of it and also stop it so that it will not continue to be a source of leakage for critical revenue. More so, laws should be instituted. When there are criminal challenges, then the National Assembly too needs to, if possible, review the law, the NCC law, and also include it as a critical offense that needs to be stemmed out.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. And just before, of course, we sign off, Bayo, for today's review session, I would like us to take a look very quickly at page 24. That's signed language there, or signed writing, page 24 of Daily Trust. If we can have that on the screen almost immediately. Now, this is a shot taken from a restaurant in somewhere in Taiwan. Obviously, a test of English as a foreign language. Please keep chair on position and keep table cleaned after dying. Wow. Thanks for your cooperation.
That was supposed to be after dining.
Is it the dead man that will do that, or the cleaner?
So it's on that note we'd like to end today's edition of Newspaper Review. Bye, Atobi. Thanks a lot for being around. See you tomorrow midweek.
All right.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll, of course, we'll be facing politics and the conduct of party primaries.
I'm okay. What happened? It's just a little scratch, Mom. How can I play with bigger boys if I'm afraid of little scratches, right?
What comforts a mother most is to see her child growing up.
Done, I'll go.
Of course. But I know that as he learns to be brave, he'll face even more germs and the risk of infection.
That's why you need Dettol protection, because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capsule for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
madam.
Nice today.
Brought us as usual.
As usual.
Mm.
You have no problem.
For the three
You are welcome, sir.
as usual, yeah.
Welcome.
You take that one.
Take that one.
Yeah.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Momo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, and we're broadcasting live as always from our Abuja headquarters studios. And just before we took that short break, of course, we did indicate that we are continuing today our conversation on the party primaries, which were concluded 2 days ago, that's October the 7th, while the parties were seeking to meet the deadline set by the Independent National Electoral Commission. We have guests with us here in the studios to provide further insight into this subject matter. But just to indicate that we're expecting the representatives of the APC, that's the All Progressives Congress, that's the ruling party, and the main opposition party, the PDP. But right here with us in the studios, we would like to welcome first the chairman of the National Conscience Party, Dr. Yunusa Tanko. Dr. Tanko, thank you very much. Thank you. At some point, of course, he was chairman of IPAC. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Also here with us in the studios, another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. She's the program director, Yaga Africa. That's Cynthia Mbamalu. Cynthia, pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Now, let me start by asking you, certainly this is not your first political climate that you are observing. You followed Nigerian politics for quite some time. Is there anything that you have found different in 2018 electioneering season, different from 2014 or 2011 as we go back? Is there any fundamental positive break from our tradition that you have seen?
Oh yes, we have a fundamental positive break. Maybe as a young woman, I would say from the aspect of young people, this time around there's a new wave of youth participation, more young people declaring to run for office as aspirants and even going through the primaries. We have some of them emerging. We have, I don't want to go into negative positive, so let's stick to the positive. So we have that. We also have the APC trying out the direct primaries. This is the first time we're having one of the dominant parties also adopting direct primaries, even though we would still have major issues to discuss when we talk about the primaries. So that is something that I think is positive. We also have women, and we have more women, young women actually, also indicating interest to run for office. And what I'm seeing this time around is we have more contest. So you have different people coming up, younger people, newer faces, coming to the political sphere, and that is enriching the conversation. Because what we hope to see towards 2019, now that we are done with the primaries, is that the conversations now will no longer be limited to argument about personalities or bashing or banters of words on personality, but rather on issues and having more citizens become conscious. We have an increase in number of registered voters, meaning we are going to have more citizens who will be participating in 2019, and we have more people getting interested in elections. Now, if we see the rate of advocacy on social media, on collect your PVC, turn out to vote, churches, mosques have gotten involved in the whole campaign on getting people together, turn out to vote. So it means there are more people getting conscious and appreciating the value of the vote. But what we're looking out for is what do we do with this consciousness and with this keen interest to engage the process, and how do we engage with candidates so that they will focus on issues that we care about.
So, but in spite of these positives that you have seen, actually that's why I started on that, it would seem as if the cloud is not pleasant. It looks doomed. The whole atmosphere does not look as pleasant as these issues you have raised, these positive issues we have seen? Why can't we build on these positives?
Well, I think our political parties are yet to appreciate the importance of our journey to democratic development. I think we still have parties that want to do things the same old way, and they want to engage or want to maintain the systems where persons with vested interest are those that will take the lead in the electoral process. So if you look at the primaries, for instance, like we said, we had more younger people getting interested, more women, but the primaries have proven to be one of the processes that have intentionally taking our time to exclude women and young people from the processes, beginning from the nomination fees, the processes of the primaries, the fact that most of them were not transparent and most of them were not democratic. So that is one of the problems. Then now we are seeing an increase in money politics, more than we ever saw before. We talked about money votes buying in Ekiti and Osun. Now at the primaries, the exchange of monies for delegates, and even at the points where there was even direct primaries, is a bit worrisome. Not a bit, it's really worrisome if you want to look at it towards 2019, because if we start expending so much money at primaries, whoever comes in will want to recoup. So we have a major challenge when we talk about how we even fight corruption. So that is one of the other threats. And then we still have that system that doesn't want to support the development in the electoral process. So while the Electoral Commission is doing a lot to build on the processes of our elections to ensure we have credible, free, fair, transparent elections, political parties are looking for more ways, or political actors looking for new ways to manipulate that process or those processes. So what you are seeing is the efforts we are trying to build upon. There's intentional steps to discredit that. And then you also have the idea of using thugs or trying to suppress voters or suppress opposition or suppress dissenting voice. That is becoming a major issue. So even at the point of the primaries, you have aspirants that were suppressed, literally at the point of primaries, that their votes, their mandates were either stolen or they were excluded from the process. And now we are seeing pre-election matters. So we'll most likely have more pre-election matters before the elections. So what are we going to be looking forward to towards the elections?
So, Doctor, sorry.
All right,
Doctor,
just hold on for a minute.
Yes.
Dr. Yunus Tanko,
yes.
Let's have your perspective on these matters.
Good morning, Nigerians. The truth about this is that as we evolve politically, there are a lot of challenges that we face. Even while we itemize some of these challenges, the fact remains that what have we done about it? Have we been able to change the system, probably to the legal process? And that is where the issue of the Electoral Act come into play. Some of these issues have been itemized in the 2015 general election. They may not have been humongous as the way they are at the moment now. And the new Electoral Act could have taken care of some of these particular issues with regard to the issue of cross-carpeting, issue of women in politics and youth and all of those ones, giving room for more political parties to actually, members of the public to participate. But unfortunately, Mr. President did not sign that particular Electoral Act into law. And that is another issue of his own. And then we will...
And he gave his reasons.
Of course, normally, we as politicians, there are things that we do at a particular time. Anytime we see something that is not going to be favorable to us at a point, we try to do everything that we can to shoot it down. The mistake we usually make is that we don't think about it after our own office. What is the future benefit of it? I give an example. Now, nobody, or probably the Electoral Act or the leaders in government, they not think about that we're going to have like almost 91%. There are so much that we, but if we have signed some of those Electoral Act into law, it will have taken care of this particular issue of electronic voting. Now that's the futuristic thinking. So that way, we will have narrowed down some of the challenges that will be faced. But that was not done. Then two, the issue of even selecting a presidential candidate and people cross-carpeting, which almost caused a lot of problem for the incumbent at a point in time, could have been taken care of in that Electoral Act, and many of the members who cross-carpeted wouldn't have even cross-carpeted in the first place. So those are some of the dangers that we really need to look out for. when we are making some of these laws. Don't look at it as an impediment to you at that particular point in time, but look at it as an opportunity that may transform into a better democratic tendency in the nearest future. So we have that to deal with. So generally, we have had problems, especially now when the issue of money have become the most dangerous cankerworm as regard to our democratic system. And it is a serious matter because it's denying other younger politicians who want to come up. Many of them look at it as a... I just finished my primary on the 6th, where I emerged as a presidential candidate. But I know what it costs to get to that particular level. And it's scary. So what about those who do not have that? So the narrative must change. We must change this particular process in such a way that every Nigerian that had an opportunity will be able to contest election and win. And where you see this particular fighting going on, so much so that everybody wants to win, it is because of this particular process that we have, where the winner take all syndrome. When you contest election, if it's party A or party B, irrespective of where, if you contest election and the vote count was 15 million for you, you will have won election. Even maybe the closest person to you get 14 million. That 14 million vote goes into waste. And then it is only the person that wins decide on the regard of how governance is being placed. And that is the reason why maybe our electoral act should have considered this issue of proportional representation. The struggle and the fight will have reduced tremendously, because with the proportional representation, as long as the political party win a certain percentage, they are all in governance. So the younger ones who want to contest will have contest only on their credibility and propelling their party to a position. And then within that percentage that they won, many young persons and people who have some little bit of credibility and they are popular could have been in power, and then the system will be changing. I think we need to consider that as urgently as possible.
Yeah, Dr. Yunus Atanko, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. I'm sure that we had you as a guest along with others when we were discussing the electoral system that we have, whether it's first past the post or proportional representation. We have currently the first past the post, which means, as you saw in Osun State, for instance, all the votes that went to Adeleke were considered a nullity because it had no impact. But it is less a matter for the Electoral Act and more an issue for constitutional amendment. And I'm sure that that's an issue that they will take a look at. But focusing on party primaries, I want to come back to you, Cynthia. Again, the topic that we had discussed on Good Morning Nigeria had to do with political party management. Some persons will argue that conducting primaries and then participating in elections are some of the critical issues that political parties normally would engage in. And here we are, the prelude to the elections themselves, from what we have seen, the political parties will appear to have been significantly challenged in the conduct of the primaries. Now, I understand from our engineers and director that there's an audio issue that has crept up. We'll take a short break.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
From what we have seen, we have the capacity which we can rapidly develop or feed in ourselves. If we don't import rice, we stop importing corn and other grains, Nigeria will have plenty of money to invest into developing industries, especially manufacturing, textiles and so on, and develop iron and steel, and complement the infrastructure development. So really, the opportunities are virtually limitless, and we are very, very aware of this. and we are prepared to exploit it to the fullest.
All right, you're welcome back, and we apologize for that audio glitch a while ago. I was just prefacing my question by referencing again a topic that we had discussed on Good Morning Nigeria, which has to do with political party management, and that some observers believe that conducting primaries and then participating in elections and, of course, forming a government, if successful, these are some of the critical issues that political party managers have to grapple with. But the view out there would appear to be that the primaries concluded nationwide on the 7th of October posed, as it were, some significant challenge to political party managers. In your opinion, what went wrong, Cynthia?
Well, I think I would look at it from the two methods adopted. So some parties, most parties had the indirect primaries, and the APC had the direct primaries. So maybe I would start with the direct primaries, because for those of us in the civil society space, there's been a lot of advocacy for direct primaries to be adopted. And while we were advocating for that, I think one of the things we failed to focus on was on the processes and how the direct primaries would be conducted. Because it's one thing to demand a direct primaries, another thing to have it conducted in such a way that party members actually feel that they can participate in that. And that was where there was a problem. And I was looking at the electoral act. We look at sections 87 that talked about parties can adopt direct primaries. It was just straight to the point. It just says parties adopt direct primaries, ensure all aspirants are given equal opportunity to be voted for. But then when it talks about indirect, there's more intention in providing the process. And that is why I like the idea of the electoral amendment, because what the electoral amendment bill seeks to do is to provide that for party members, for direct primaries, every registered member must have an equal opportunity to vote for the aspirants of their choice. And from that provision, what it means is there must be an updated register of members. So that is where there is a problem first for direct primaries. Did we have an updated, up-to-date, transparent, credible register of members for the party that adopted direct primaries, where all those that voted registered members of this party, and was that register a certified register of the party members? That is one. And the process of voting, was it, because if you observed, we had voice voting at some places. We had so we can't talk about the process itself. So that was also a process, a challenge with that. So that is direct primaries. The same thing with indirect primaries. Indirect primaries is a delegate process, right? But what we see is we have delegate process that at the point of the primaries themselves, you're not even sure who a delegate is, because there's no formal accreditation process. You don't have, the list is not telling you exactly who the delegates are. For one of the parties we observed, I don't want to call names, what we saw was after the delegates finished voting, they go back and they switch with another member of the party that is present with the delegate tag. The person goes with that same delegate tag to vote. So you could not control who was voting and who wasn't. So the issue of multiple voting was going on. So you had that problem. So the delegate selection process became a major challenge. And what I'm looking out for the electoral amendment bill, actually, there's a provision that now says for indirect primaries, delegates must be elected first at the ward level, and only those elected by members of the parties would proceed to the primary. So that is also another process. The other thing is parties maintaining or respecting their guidelines on primaries. Because for our observation, our checklist was designed in line with the primary guidelines of the primaries and for the parties we observed. But what we saw was most times there was a total neglect of what the guidelines are. So you're going with the guidelines and you're seeing something that's happening. You're wondering what guideline is being adopted for these primaries. Some of the delegates are not even informed on what to do or how to engage the process. Then we talk about inclusion. Women, young persons, and persons with disabilities. At least in PDP, we could see an increase in number of women delegates and young people. We also saw a bit of that in APC. In some of the other parties, we didn't really see much of that, which is also a problem, because for most of their constitution, there's a provision that for the selection of delegates, every youth leader, every woman leader, you'd see that at different levels, from the ward, local government, state, and all that. So the question is, don't you have all these women youth leaders, but at least that should take up the number of women and young persons and persons with disabilities, actually, that would be as delegates. So that was also another problem. Then the process itself, the voting, we had secret ballot for most of the indirect primaries. You see, it was secret ballot. But then the counting, because one thing to vote, another thing to count. And we saw that in the party that adopted the direct primaries, because there is no way you conduct the direct primaries nationwide that you can count the vote, transmit and collate and announce within the period of time that we saw that happen. So that raises a lot of questions on process, both for the direct and indirect primaries. At least for some of the parties, there was an intention to make it seem transparent and clear. But then what about because most of them focus on presidential, because we looked at governorship and House of Assembly and House of Representatives and the Senate. That is where we had major challenges for women and young people. Some of them went out, had their delegates ready, and when it came to the voting, after the voting was done, one of our young women at our place, towards the end, when she was winning, the process was scattered and they said they have to start all over again. And that was it. Another person, they finished the vote, and all of a sudden they said some of our delegates are not allowed to vote. They were accredited, they had all the requirements to vote, and they were not allowed to vote. And she has even gone on social media to call on her party to come and review that at her level. We also have parties that after they finished conducting, they said, oh, but there's an anointed candidate that was supposed to be from the party. And we're saying, if you go through primaries and you emerge, why not give that mandate to the person that actually won the election? Why the primaries? Why look for an anointed? Because that is not democratic. We've always said it, that consensus is not democratic. The Electoral Act is even clear that where we have only one aspirant, for instance, let's say there's only one aspirant for a party, there's even a process for that. It's going to be a national convention, and that aspirant is adopted by the members. It's not a decision by party leaders. It's a party membership decision. And that brings us to the question of party management. Who are members of political parties? What are the rights and the powers of members of parties? And how do these members assert their powers and their sovereignty within the parties? Or is primaries now a decision for the select few at the top who are the leaders of the parties? Because if we can't have internal party democracy within the parties, then there's a problem for us, because these are the people that will become leaders tomorrow. It means when in governing the nation, when it comes to democracy, they would not be pushing forward issues of national development and democratic development. So it begins from the primaries.
All right, Cynthia, thank you very much. You raised a number of points. One of them we will dredge up again for you to speak to in greater detail, and that has to do with who ultimately chooses the candidates of political parties to stand for elections. Is it that the working committee of a political party can ride roughshod over the choice of the members who are out there on the field? But that's a question to address. But Femi, yes. I think that let's get the experience of Dr. Tanko with regard to how political parties have tried to grapple with this very significant management issue. That is to say, the conduct of primaries.
Now, what is party primaries actually? I think the electorate need to be educated as regard to what really is party primaries. According to Wikipedia, it says that it's the process where the voters actually through either general, public, or closed election in order to choose a preferred candidate that will run for elections, either a general election or by-elections. And that way, the political party have the right now to select who becomes their candidate. And it went further to say that the process is actually a way in taking away the powers that whether the leaders of political party will select the candidate and then handing it over to the general public. Now, it's the process that actually started historically in the United States through the progressive movement. The idea was to ensure that the people have a hand in the selection process rather than handing it out to just a microscopic few. Let me use the word of Obai. That is the idea of the primaries. But the primaries who comes in different shape is either you have a closed primary or an open primary. In a closed primary, what it means is that only members of that political party have the right to select. In an open primary, you have the general public selecting that particular candidate. It may also be a closed primary or a semi-closed primary. That way, the generality of the public may either be member of that political party or may not be member of that political party. In our own case, we have issues that get direct and indirect primaries, and at the same time, there are issues of consensus candidate, and then probably at the end of it all also, there's a caucus selection would take place even before the primaries. And those are some of the things that may be inimical to actually selecting the actual choice of the people. And now let's look at the problems that all of these particular processes have. In the issue of the direct primaries, I think majority of Nigerians are now seeing it more openly, because at the point in time, January 2015, virtually all the political parties did an indirect primary. Now, certain political parties decided to use 3 of those particular primary process as an opportunity for them to select, and that became a problem. And I'm not so sure whether probably the Electoral Act give you the room to use all the 3 at a point rather than taking one, so that it could be a uniform one. That's another issue, because certain political party has consensus, you have indirect, you have direct, you can even go as much as you can. So they were given all kind of room, and that is a recipe for chaos, as we have just examined. It's a recipe for chaos, because the constitution of the party, which will be domiciled by INEC, must signify exactly which of the processes that you are taking. Like in my own political party, it's an indirect primaries that we have. It is there in the document of the constitution of the party. And then INEC have it as a prerequisite to our processes and guidelines of selecting whoever the political party wants. But when you have multi types of primary, it becomes an issue. And then some of them actually leave it for the political parties in different levels to choose the one they want. And that gives you an opportunity to manipulate the system to your own interest. When you know that the system of indirect primary will favor some of your preferred candidates, you will now want to force that particular process onto the hands of these particular political party leaders. And if you look at the other one is the consensus that you want to do, then that's what gives room for the revolt that you see in some of those political. But if there's an agreement ab initio that this is where we are going, everybody is prepared toward that particular area. So the uproar that we saw in some of these political processes was as a result of the open blanket that we give them for manipulation to take place. And that should be resisted completely.
Was there no manipulation in your own instance? National Conscience Party, from the name and from the founder's name,
yes.
Oganifawemi,
Yes.
am I right?
Yes.
People would think that that is a party of comrades.
Yes.
But you just confessed on this program
Yes.
that the amount you spent was scary.
Yes.
Now, even in a setting like yours that was supposed to be for comrades,
Yes.
there was still room for bargain. Some people will call it manipulation.
Yes.
What is it that makes it impossible to get a unified goal in a political party, and yet others in the Nigerian situation now, almost every party is complaining and people are complaining or being cheated out or something. Have we ever tried to address the Nigerian attitude that goes into every political party and must manifest in all political parties?
Yes, which I actually mentioned to you earlier on. Now, take a look at it. When you want to have a primary, you have processes of have to think of accommodating, transportation of members, feeding of members. You know, and
why did you have to do that?
You are if you are doing an indirect primary, you are bringing people into a particular close place, and they have to travel around the country. It's not as if maybe you just take to Yanya or Abuja here and then decide to bring people from one close. No, no, no. You have to have representatives all over the country, and they have to come, and that costs money. And for a political party like ours, we don't have that kind of money back in our political parties. And so it becomes difficult for us. So the little hard-earned resources that you had must be put into that particular process. We try as much as possible to make it as free and fair to all concerned. In the National Conscience Party, we were having delegates primaries, where 4 of those particular delegates will come from each of the states, representing the teeming population that they have back at home. And that is, of course, it takes another process itself. So we were as practical as possible to ensure that we do not stain our integrity. And if there are issues that are being raised, we try to address them as quickly as possible so that people will understand that we are being plain as much. So, but when you say the attitude of Nigerians now, that is a big question on its own. I give you an example. Now, we have been crying in this country that we are just going backwards. And then we said that Malaysia took our palm kernel and then went to their own country, and then they are now profiteering on that particular palm kernel. We have made it into a song. Everywhere you hear that particular narrative, we have made it into a song. But the fact is that since we have already been able to identify that palm kernel can bring in such a huge sum of resources, why have you not used it as our own? So these are some of the things that we need to think. So if we have identified that over the years that the problem we have as Nigerians now is that we have challenges of political party money being used, the electoral, why can't we find solutions to some of them? We have been able to think about it and say these are some of the solutions that our leaders should stop thinking about themselves in their offices at the moment now. Think about what Nigerians need in the nearest future. And that is why majority of the electorate have challenges in believing in the political system.
All right. Dr. Tanko, you talked about a number of points pertaining to the mode of direct primaries. A mode of primaries, direct, indirect, and consensus. The law recognizes direct and indirect. Even when you have a consensus candidate, you still require affirmation. As we saw with President Muhammadu Buhari, you had to have delegates, affirm him as a candidate of the party, regardless of what had happened in the past. And then the closed and open primaries, of course, for the open primaries, California has always had a challenge with that, particularly in the U.S. Now, the naughty point that perhaps that needs clarification from what you have explained, were you expecting a political party to say, yes, for the purpose of all our elections countrywide, we're going to adopt direct primaries, or for the purpose of all our primaries countrywide, we are going to adopt indirect primaries? Now, when the political party adopted direct primaries and then gave the discretion to the state chapters to adopt whichever method, was there going to be should there be an issue with that?
Of course.
Why should there be an issue? I'm asking this question because the primaries in specific constituencies or for specific offices or specific elective offices are identifiable as individual primaries themselves, not the generality. So if they adopt direct primaries for, say, governorship, and I decide to choose indirect primaries for House of Assembly elections, would that be a problem?
Yeah, there's going to be a problem. Let me give you an example. You see, when you decide, you give an open opportunity to people, they tend to use it to their own advantage. And that caused problem. Ogun State witnessed a similar thing in their own primary, you see. So by the time you give them that particular room, they will, of course, use that particular process to take the one that suits them for the interest of their own candidate. And that is chaos. Now, another issue came up. I saw a post on the social media. There was a guy who was trying to tie his neck to a banana tree, saying that how can a political party candidate say he got about 14 million, and then yet at the same time again, when they are going to be affirmation at their primary convention, it's only 2,000 something that make an affirmation. He himself is confused because he doesn't know that the direct primaries was that every state can vote, and then when they vote, the number, of course, will become huge. You know, so when the candidate got about 14 million and all, he was now wondering, then you now have a close affirmation by 2 million. So he was trying to navigate which figure is he going to take. So it creates a lot of doubt and misinformation into the. But when you have a direct position on the position of what the political party wants, it's either we take direct or indirect primary. There's a clear management directive that's been given. So it's not open for any manipulation. But quite honestly, this one was open for a lot of manipulation, and some people are still crying, even to a point that some of the leaders and wives of the political party leaders are crying foul play.
All right, Cynthia, we want to pause in the meantime and take viewers' reactions that have come in. by way of tweets. Let's take, Femi, let's take these tweets now. Femi, yes. I mean, rather, not Femi now. This is Festus Akimboewa has this first tweet that we are taking. It says, the political parties' primaries and the confusion surrounding those primaries made many strong candidates lose out, and this is depressing. Politicians must stop seeing elections as a do-or-die affair, and the influence of money must be discouraged if we want credible candidates to run our country. And
Daily Jack Solomon tweets, we thought direct primaries will, among others, ensure fairness, create a level playing ground for contestants, eliminate corrupt tendencies usually associated with the delegate system, and ultimately ensure full participation of party members at all levels. But reverse was the case.
Matthew Garba has this tweet. It says, most politicians fall out with their godfathers, and this leads to their failure to win the primaries.
And again from Daily Jack Solomon, with the aftermath of the concluded primaries, there is need for effective restructuring of internal laws and policies within the political parties in Nigeria, establishment of punitive measures, and the practice of transparency by INEC would ensure good governance in Nigeria.
Now, Adebisi Alade tweets, party leaders need to be careful about the kind of influence they have in imposing their favorite candidates on the members of the political party.
Abila Kwara, I thought in the Electoral Act, INEC is supposed to supervise the conduct of parties' primaries so as to ensure free and fair process. Unfortunately, parties were left alone to use the power of incumbency to deny the participation of others. Very sad.
And Daily Jack Solomon again has this tweet. It says, political parties, national electoral committees, and other working organs must ensure that they smoothen the rough edges of the challenges thrown up in some states in the course of the primaries, so that they can rebuild unity in their parties and ensure that aggrieved members are adequately settled.
Sani Michael Omakoji, the fallout of the political party primaries are nothing other than money bag and social engineering against co-contestants who are less influential. Until we do away with those elements mentioned, accidental leaders and ill-prepared leaders would seize power and emerge.
All right, those are some of the tweets that we'll take. In the meantime, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Okay, I'm okay.
What happened?
It's just a little scratch, Mom. How can I play with bigger boys if I'm afraid of little scratches, right?
What comforts a mother most is to see her child growing up.
Done, I'll go.
Of course. But I know that as he learns to be brave, he'll face even more germs and the risk of infection.
That's why you need Dettol protection, because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We are still with you on Good Morning Nigeria, discussing the just concluded primaries, and we're trying to look into what happened and how Nigeria's democracy can forge ahead. Cynthia, let's look at politics as it is anywhere in the world. Generally, democracy is representative government. Everybody cannot be in government, so it's representative government. So at the political party level, somehow there are people coming from these primaries too that have argued that it is also representative. From what you think should be the ideal, who should be choosing the party representatives? Is it the party leadership or the party members? And if it is the party members, now that's what we have been discussing, whether direct, indirect, and all that. But in this instance, in the Nigerian instance, we have seen where the national body of the political parties have chosen representatives. How adequate is that?
Well, I think the answer is right from the question. One, democracy is about representation. And if you look at how democracy is practiced in different parts of the world, you'd see there's a lot of emphasis on representation, ensuring that the people participate. And that is where I think we still have a problem or challenge. Is the fact that, I don't know if I would connect that to our history as a nation. The fact that